Hello, Telesur English presents a new episode of China Now, a web media's production that showcases the culture, technology, and politics of the Asian giant. In this first segment, China Currents dives into the top stories of the week, including US TikTok ban and its unexpected consequences, and China's recent breakthrough in lithium exploration, among other topics. Let's see.
China Currents is a weekly news talk show from China to the world. We cover viral news about China every week and also give you the newest updates on China's cutting-edge technologies. Let's get started.
Welcome to China Currents, your weekly news report on the latest developments in China. I'm Derek, and in this episode, we'll cover the US TikTok ban is creating cyber refugees on Chinese social media platforms, a powerful earthquake in Tibet's autonomous region, China's significant breakthrough in lithium exploration. First, let's dive into the effects of the US TikTok ban. The TikTok ban is taken down. By 19th of this month, 170 million Americans will lose access to their beloved and, in many cases, life-sustaining TikTok accounts. The most immediate consequence of the TikTok ban is the economic loss. Nico Turner-Lee, the director of the Center of the Technology Innovation at the Brookings Institution, pointed out that the global economic value generated by TikTok creators reaches $215 billion. Shutting down TikTok will cost American small businesses and the creators an estimated $1.3 billion monthly. Moreover, females will become the largest victims of the TikTok ban. According to NPR, 84% of influencers on platform are women. Last October, Cora Leakey quit her six-figure job in talent acquisition and project management after realizing that running a TikTok account could earn her even more and potentially help her pay off her student loan debts. However, the Biden administration is determined to destroy her new livelihood before leaving office, forcing her to learn Chinese in order to develop her presence on Douyin, the Chinese version of TikTok. Many TikTokers from the US have also sparked a TikTok refugee hashtag on Chinese social media, where their unemployment stories have gained widespread sympathy from Chinese netizens. An Oxford University report showed that, like Cora Leakey, 7 million US small businesses rely on TikTok for their livelihood. And around 70% of small businesses say TikTok has led to increased sales in the past year, and 39 claim that access to TikTok is critical for their survival. For example, Delian Barrows, a 41-year-old lady who built a financial consulting company from scratch on TikTok, said that a TikTok ban would wipe out 30% of her business overnight. Now, living in Portugal, she told Business Insider, "I'm happier now that I've left the American dream behind." On the other hand, the damage to the US democratic system could be even more severe. There are 170 million TikTok users in the US, which is 100 million more than the number of popular votes Trump received in the 2024 election, and 90 million more than Biden's in 2020. In other words, TikTok is even more popular in America than the President of the United States. This makes the Biden administration's claims of national security as the reason for banning it all the more perplexing to the Chinese public. If the US is truly a democratic country, isn't it the Biden government, which challenges the will of more than half of the American people, that should be considered the biggest threat to national security? This paradox was addressed by conservative Justice Brett Kavanaugh. During the last hearing, he criticized TikTok is potentially using the information to deter people. According to The Intercept, the US government's fixation on TikTok's influence on the discourse surrounding the Gaza war is the key concern. The Jerusalem Post notes that the Free Palestine hashtag has appeared in 35 million TikTok videos, about 28 times more than Stand with Israel, making it more likely for young Americans to sympathize with the Palestinians. However, the Washington Post pointed out that a similar trend appears on Facebook and Instagram. On Facebook, the Free Palestine appears in more than 11 million posts, 39 times more than those with the Stand with Israel. On Instagram, pro-Palestine hashtag appears in 6 million posts, 26 times more than the pro-Israel hashtag. The consistency of pro-Palestine content across social networks, whether Chinese or American-owned, undermines the argument central to the anti-TikTok campaign. On the final day of its term, the Biden administration is attempting to destroy a social media platform that is beloved by Americans more than himself, and forcing 7 million small businesses into financial crisis. This may represent the most significant crisis the U.S. Constitution's First Amendment has ever faced, and it is perhaps a moment when the people most fully appreciate the necessity of the Second Amendment. Next up, another bad news from China's Tibet province. On 7th January, a powerful 6.8 magnitude earthquake struck Dinri County in China's Tibet province, resulting in 126 fatalities. Dinri County is located at an altitude of 4,300 meters, covering an area of more than 30,000 square kilometers, roughly twice the size of Shanghai. The nighttime temperature can plunge to around minus 50 degrees Celsius. In these extreme conditions, over 61,000 residents are left in urgent need of shelter. According to Chinese state media, military aircraft were dispatched to assess the situation just 10 minutes after the earthquake struck. Within 30 minutes, rescue teams reached the epicenter and began their operations. Within 6 hours, the Chinese military deployed drones, helicopters, and a Y-20 transport aircraft to deliver supplies to the disaster zone. Within a single day, power and communication services were restored across the region. By the following day, temporary shelters were set up for the displaced population, and the local authorities announced that disaster relief supplies were fully stocked, clarifying that no additional donations were necessary. As of now, over 220 resettlement sites have been established, providing shelter to 47,000 displaced residents. According to Xinhua News Agency, these shelters are designed for quick assembling, with each unit capable of being set up in as little as 8 minutes. Each shelter can accommodate 4 to 5 people and is equipped with heating facilities and, in some areas, even Wi-Fi access. The local government has announced that rescue operations will transition to resettlement and post-disaster reconstruction in the coming week. More than 40,000 personnel, including soldiers, police officers, firefighters, medical teams, and volunteers, have contributed to the rescue efforts. The Chinese people expressed their appreciation for their performance, but were not surprised. This is because, since 2002, disaster relief operations have been incorporated into Chinese People's Liberation Army's military training and evaluation programs. In 2005, China introduced the regulations on the Army's participation in emergency rescue and disaster relief, formalizing the military's role in rescue operations, material transport, and post-disaster reconstruction. Next up, let's take a sip of some good news. On 8th of January, China made a significant leap in its lithium exploration efforts, increasing its lithium reserves from 6% to 70.5% of the global supply. This advancement has moved China from the 6th largest holder of lithium reserves to 2nd place globally, behind only Chile and surpassing Australia. In the Pamir Plateau, China has uncovered a massive lithium deposit, a 2,800-kilometer long methanogenic belt with a proven reserves of over 6.8 million tons and potential resources exceeding 30 million tons. As the world's largest producer and consumer of lithium batteries, China's push to tap into these domestic resources is crucial for reducing reliance on foreign suppliers and bolstering its position in the global electrical vehicle market. This breakthrough is also largely driven by advances in lithium extraction technology, especially a new method for extracting lithium from salt lakes. The process, inspired by how certain plants naturally absorb and release salts, has been adapted for lithium extraction. This new technique is considered a game changer because it enables more efficient lithium recovery with far less environmental impact compared to traditional methods, which often generate harmful wastewater and waste. China's Salt Lake lithium reserves alone are now estimated to exceed 40 million tons, positioning the country as the third largest global holder of Salt Lake lithium, behind South America's lithium triangle and the western US. While lithium prices are stable for now and unlikely to be affected in the short term, this technology is expected to help Chinese companies strengthening their competitive edge in the long run. That's all for today. Thank you for watching this episode of China Currents. If you have any thoughts or comments, please reach us at the email address below. We look forward to hearing from you. See you next time.
And now we have a short break coming up, but we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to China Now. Global Arena welcomes founder of Democracy at Work, Richard D. Wolff, and Thinkers Forum hosts former Greek Finance Minister Yanis Varoufakis discussing current global challenges. Let's have a look.
The problem of the United States and its manufacturing sector is much larger than this relationship between the United States and China. It is probably more accurate to say that China has become the scapegoat, the way for the leadership here in the United States to focus the upset of the American people about the loss of manufacturing on one particular country. But that is a strange argument. The decision to move manufacturing industry out of the United States, particularly over the last 30 to 40 years, was made by the corporate leadership of American industry. And one of the places that both US and foreign capitalists moved their manufacturing was to the People's Republic of China. The reasons were very simple. Number one, the wage level in China was much lower than the wage level in the United States or Western Europe or Japan. And number two, China, with its huge population and its rapid economic growth of the last 30 years, was the world's largest, fastest growing market. The same is true in Vietnam. The same is true in Brazil. The same is true to more or less of a degree in many other countries. This is the normal market-driven, profit-maximizing behavior of capitalists. To blame it on China is bizarre. Every president out of the last 10 has campaigned on reviving manufacturing. Bush did it, Clinton did it, Obama did it, Biden did it. They all promise it, and none of them has achieved it. So it has become a kind of empty promise of American politics, Republican, Democrat alike. This is what they must say, so they say it. But what they can do is very little, because the position is determined by conditions over which American leaders do not have control. They do not control the wages around the world. They do not control the growth of markets around the world. By the way, you can see it also in that many presidents, Republican and Democrat alike, will tell you, over my presidency, we added 6 million manufacturing jobs. Technically, it's true. What it leaves out is you lost 8 million. And that's been the history that we've actually seen. And I would argue further that I don't see much prospect for manufacturing to come back to the United States. Even the turn towards economic nationalism that we are seeing in the United States and in other countries, even that is partly a process that will take a long time. In order for the United States to once again become a manufacturing economy, it would have to compete with the rest of the world, above all at the level of wages and the benefits workers get in this country. And that's going to take a long time because the wages in the United States are still significantly higher than in most of the rest of the world, less so than in the past. The direction is it, but it'll take time. If Mr. Trump resumes his program from his first period as president, namely to apply high tariffs to Chinese exports to the United States, if he does that, it will, of course, raise prices inside the United States because Americans buying Chinese goods will have to pay the price China charges, plus, in addition, the tariff implied by Washington that goes to Washington, and that means prices will go up. Well, that's not good for the inflation. The United States has a problem with inflation. Mr. Trump campaigned for president on a program of fighting inflation. If he's going to fight inflation, he can't apply tariffs to China. And if he's going to apply tariffs to China, it's going to make the inflation worse, not better. We have no idea how this contradiction is going to be handled at this point. Mr. Trump renegotiated the legal agreements between Canada, Mexico, and the United States. He would tariff against Canada and against Mexico. If Mr. Trump goes ahead with his plans, it will do major damage to Mexico and to Canada. What will be the result? One of the things they're for sure thinking about, and maybe already doing, they're going to revisit their relationship to the People's Republic of China, because they're going to offset the damage done by the United States by becoming closer economically with China, which is not what the United States wants. That's the contradiction of United States policy. Over the last 30 to 40 years, American capitalists have invested huge amounts of money in the People's Republic of China. And they did so with the intention and the plan of producing not only for the Chinese market, but for the global market. They are not interested in economic nationalism. They are opposed to it. On the other hand, you have those American industries that are threatened by the competition from China. They want the government to be more nationalist to protect them against Chinese, and not just Chinese, but global competition. There is a conflict inside the United States, which reaches all the way up to the Trump administration and exists in both parties, the Republican and the Democrat, in which there's an ongoing struggle between those who want a good economic relationship with China and those who do not. And that is being fought out every day, usually not in the public view, quietly, in conferences, in think tanks, in books and articles written and circulated. And one day, and it may be soon, these will explode into the open, and then everybody will see it.
Weather doesn't care about meteorologists' predictions. Meteorologists simply try to forecast the weather. They don't make the weather. But you and me, we make history. Hello, this is Yannis Varoufakis with a review of 2024 with a potpourri of different topics which offer us an interesting perspective, I believe, from which to reassess the year which is ending, 2024. Let's begin with the one word that encapsulates 2024. I'm afraid it's not a pleasant one. The word I'm choosing for 2024 is the word genocide. As for the event that connects with it, it is of course the genocide of the Palestinians in Gaza, a people that have been placed on death row by the Israeli army, the IDF, a people that are being ethnically cleansed by the same state and the settlers in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, a people that have been constantly denied the right to exist since 1948. That's the one event which is essentially a culmination of what has been happening now for decades upon decades. As for the person that will be remembered by the historians of the future as the most influential, unfortunately, his name is Donald Trump. I'm going to concentrate on what I consider to be the great conundrum that he's facing. Allow me to put it briefly. If he succeeds using his gigantic tariffs to redress and eliminate the trade deficit of the United States, which is his stated objective, then he will have failed his own tribe. Which tribe? What is the tribe of Donald Trump? The people that he feels closest to. Real estate agents and financiers in Wall Street. And why will he have betrayed them if his tariffs succeed in eliminating the US trade deficit? Because it's the US trade deficit which is driving the factories of Japan, of Germany, indeed of China, producing profits for these companies outside the United States, which to a very large extent return to the United States because they are in dollars. They go to Wall Street where they finance what? Real estate and the stock exchange, as well as the American government. So if Trump succeeds to eliminate the US trade deficit, he will have eliminated the tsunami of dollars that goes into Wall Street, effectively lifting all the boats of his own tribe, the financiers and the realtors. So either he's going to betray his own tribe by fulfilling his promise to the majority of the Americans, especially the American working class, or he's going to betray the American working class in favor of his own tribe. Guess which choice I think he's going to make. Let us now focus on Germany. The reason why Germany was such a great success story after the Second World War is three words: United States of America. Because it was the United States of America that did a number of things that made the German industrial miracle possible. Firstly, they eliminated their debt. Effectively, they forgave them their debt to the Americans and to the rest of Europe as well. I was in a conference in London in the early 1950s. Secondly, they fixed the exchange rates such that the German currency would be undervalued, therefore assisting German net exports to the rest of the European periphery initially and to the rest of the world, including the United States and China later. Thirdly, the United States made sure that the macroeconomy of the capitalist world, indeed the whole world, was amenable to whatever it is that the German factories were producing in large quantities and in high quality, especially mechanical and electrical engineering, as well as the chemical industry. In other words, the government of the Federal Republic of Germany never had to worry about managing the macroeconomy because the Americans were doing it for them, until they stopped doing it in 1971. But then after that, the European Union created its own fixed exchange rate regime, and later the euro, which was always much lower in value than the Deutschmark would have been, therefore assisting German exports. So effectively the American and European world was providing a cocoon for German industry, the traditional heavy goods industry, to grow and become a great success story. And of course, it is important to note the very cheap energy that Germany was getting from Russia. Then after the 2008 near collapse of world capitalism, at least North Atlantic capitalism, we had the bankruptcy of the European periphery, but China rose up and picked up the slack. So the net exports of Germany that were going to Italy, to Greece, to Portugal, to Ireland and so on, went to China. Until more recently, something tragic happened for Germany. Because after the 2008 crisis, the German government insisted, inanely, allow me to say idiotically, on massive austerity across Europe, not just in Greece and in Ireland and in Italy, but also in Germany itself. That is a class war against the working class of Europe. While at the same time, the European Central Bank was printing rivers of cash for the financiers. What happened was, when you have big business receiving a lot of money, but they look out of the window and they see the masses impecunious, too poor to buy expensive goods, they don't invest these big businesses. They take the money that the central bank produces and they buy back their own shares, but that's not investment. So for 15 years now, at least 15 years, German industry has not invested in its own technologies. So they missed out on an important technological revolution, unlike the Chinese and unlike the Americans. That is why now the German industrial model is kaput. It's finished. And along with it, you have the political system, which you can see what's happening in Germany. There's no government. And even when they do have a government, Friedrich Merz will probably be elected in January with the new year. But again, the whole of the political class is utterly bereft of ideas of how to manage a macroeconomy which, since the Second World War, was managed by other forces, by the Americans and the European Union. Now the Americans don't care, especially with Donald Trump, and the European Union is too fragmented to provide that amazing service for Germany. Recently, Angela Merkel published a very long memoir. What is absolutely remarkable is how unremarkable it is. It is a reminder of the very low level of understanding, of grasp, that European politicians, more generally, and German politicians in particular, have over the circumstances that Germany is facing today. And in the case of Angela Merkel, she has missed out with this memoir a brilliant opportunity to self-reflect, to be self-critical. It is astonishing. Never before have I seen a smart person, and there's no doubt that Angela Merkel is a smart person, successfully miss every opportunity to reassess an era that she helped shape, fashion, from something resembling an objective point of view. The reason why I'm being so critical of Merkel is exactly the same as the reason for which I think the historian of the future is going to be very harsh in her or his judgment of the former Chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany. She was neither very good nor very bad. She was rather indifferent. But where I do believe that she has a massive amount of responsibility for the state, the very sorry state of Europe, and in particular this collapse of the German industrial model and of the Federal Republic of Germany's prospects, is that around 2009, 2010, immediately after the Wall Street collapse, which meant very, very soon after that, that all the banks in Germany went bankrupt, along with the French ones and the rest of European banks. Nevertheless, because she was a very skilled politician in terms of playing the political game in the cabinets, in the European Union councils, she was remarkable at getting her way. But what was the purpose that she was serving? What was her objective? To make sure that business continues as usual in a period when business could not continue as usual. So this is my criticism. She had immense political capital because she was so skilled, and she had managed to eliminate all her political opponents, not only in Germany, but across Europe. She had a lot of gravitas. She could sway public opinion, not just in Germany, but across Europe. And she wasted spectacularly, momentously, stupendously, she wasted that potential. She could have been a force for consolidating the European Union, and she always said 9, 9, and 9 to that. That is why this memoir that she just published is going to remain unread and a testimony to perhaps the most successful German politicians of the last 50 years' incapacity to grasp her own failure and wasted opportunities. A few words about France. Do you remember when Emmanuel Macron was first elected president of France? He was hailed as the great white hope of the liberal establishment, not only in France, but in Europe and beyond Europe. He was celebrated as the young man with fresh ideas, a fresh look, smart and energetic, the young politician, the youngest president of the French Republic ever, who was going to slay the dragon of the populist, ultra-right, xenophobic National Front. And how did he end up? He will be remembered in history as the greatest enabler of the racist, xenophobic National Front, ultra-rightist party, which is now the largest party in France as a result of Mr. Macron's choices. Because Mr. Macron, being a radical centrist, in the end, and not just in the end, but from the very first day when he entered the Élysée Palace, he practiced the usual radical centrist policy of massive austerity for the many and one tax cut after the other for the oligarchs. This combination of generosity to the very, very few and harshness, a kind of punishment for the majority, created a lot of discontent. And guess who harvested this discontent? It was Le Pen and the ultra-right, xenophobic, racist National Front. In a state of panic, resembling a man who has fallen into a sandpit and he's trying to get out of it, but the more he struggles to get out, the deeper he goes into that sinkhole. Emmanuel Macron tried some desperate measures, like hoping for an electoral miracle. He dissolved the French National Assembly. And what happened was his party bottomed out. Le Pen did magnificently well. And the result was no government under the presidency of Mr. Macron. Every move he's making is strengthening the ultra-right that he was supposed to slay like the dragon that the center, the radical center, loathes. So that's how 2024 and history from now on is going to judge him as a young man who offered most promise to the establishment but ended up being its gravedigger. A few words about South Korea, where, you remember, very recently, the president of South Korea attempted to stage a coup d'etat, essentially to disband parliament and to establish martial law. A country that had many such coups d'etats in the past, but which managed, as a result of tremendous struggles by trades unionists, by progressives, by Democrats, to put this behind them. But now it came back, of course, as a farce more than as a tragedy, because the whole attempt collapsed very soon. Nevertheless, I think that farcical coup d'etat, attempt at a coup d'etat in South Korea, it contains lessons for us. In that ludicrous television address by the president of South Korea, the excuse he gave was that Parliament was becoming very cozy, very friendly with Beijing, with China. And even though that was absolutely ludicrous, it does speak to the kind of toxicity that emanates from Washington, D.C., from the new cold warriors in the United States that have, over the last few years, made it their business to poison the soul of political forces of the public in Europe, including in South Korea. China is somehow not only a foe that needs to be defeated and contained, but also a good excuse for all sorts of criminal acts, including the attempted coup d'etat by the South Korean president. It is essential that we in the West, in particular, counter this massive attempt to create a kind of, not just Cold War, but a warmongering atmosphere in which all sorts of criminalities, all sorts of poisons, toxic political forces are justified to do anything they feel like simply by mentioning the word China in the same way that parents used to, at least when I was growing up in Greece as a child, to mention some kind of monster that would come out of the closet in the middle of the night and eat you up as a child if you didn't eat your food. Syria. The fall of Assad, which I'm not going to comment now in a journalistic way. I'm going to comment about what happened the day Assad fell from a very private perspective. It reminded me of the difficulty that I have been facing, and again, forgive me for speaking personally, over a number of years, with the inability of both political adversaries who are always on the side of American imperialism, as well as many comrades who are on my side opposing American imperialism, the difficulty that both these camps have in taking a moral position, a moral ethical stance against dictators. I remember, once upon a time when Saddam Hussein was the greatest friend of the West in the Middle East. Remember, the United States and Europe and the United Kingdom loved Saddam Hussein. They were arming him, making him wage war against Iran. He was their boy, their blue-eyed boy, allow me to say, in the Middle East. People like me, we were on the barricades outside the Iraqi embassy in London, for instance, but other capitals in Europe as well, demonstrating against the monster. Because that monster, Saddam Hussein, had converted the Ba'ath Socialist Party from being an Arab nationalist party into his own instrument of suppressing the Iraqi people and of effectively fleecing the country. Back then, the West was treating people like me as fools, as eccentrics, for opposing Saddam Hussein. Then they fell out with him, or they decided it was in their interest to invade his country, and they invaded. And people like me, who were always opposing Saddam Hussein, immediately sprang to the defense of the Iraqi people and opposed the US invasion. Similarly with, who remembers Slobodan Milosevic in Serbia, another monster. But nevertheless, NATO was even more monstrous by bombarding Serbia, using Milosevic as an excuse. So, people like me, we were simultaneously opposing Milosevic and the American bombardments of Yugoslavia. Then the same thing with Libya, and now with Assad. Exactly the same situation. It is clear that Assad fell because of a United States and Israel inspired onslaught by formerly Al-Qaeda terrorists, who now the West is treating like freedom fighters. This is the hypocrisy of the West. But at the same time, I have to say, friends and comrades, that the moment Assad fell and his awful middle-age-like prisons, their doors flung out and all these tortured people came out and their relatives and citizens were celebrating on the street. I felt joy and I declared it, because every time a tyrant falls, we have a duty as progressives to feel, just for one moment, joy, even if we know that the people who actually overthrew them are probably worse. And the result will be like in Iraq or Libya. Maybe the future will be darker for the people of Syria. But why can't we refuse to take sides either with US imperialism or with the tyrant that US imperialism has targeted when at some point that dictator, that tyrant, no longer fitted the plans of US imperialists? I think it's important. It's important to care about people, to have minimal ethical standards in the way that we approach other people's lives, other people's concerns and anxieties. Now, it's customary at the end of every year for people to try to prognosticate, to forecast, to predict what will be in store in the next year, in 2025. I refuse to do this steadfastly, and I refuse to do this from an ideological perspective. It is a political stance, it is a political choice, it's an activist choice to refuse to prognosticate. And let me explain why. If you are a meteorologist, your job is to predict the weather. That is what you're being paid to do. And the reason why you can do it in a scientific way is because the weather doesn't care about meteorologists' predictions. Meteorologists simply try to forecast the weather. They don't make the weather. But you and me, we make history. All of us, humans, together make our own story. So we have no right to sit back on our armchair and indulge in forecasts. We better get out of our chairs and make the world a better place for humanity and indeed for nature. With these thoughts on some of the issues and the places and the characters that marked 2024, I bid you farewell and I wish you a prosperous 2025. And let's make history happen, not the way that it is happening, but in a manner which reflects our better instincts.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and future of the Asian giant. We hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.